He was a general who unified China, but also the one who lost it to his rivals. He called himself the savior of the nation, yet history has labeled him with many different names, from hero to failure. And let's not forget, while he was defeated on the Chinese mainland, he turned a small island into a global economic powerhouse. This is the contradictory story of Chiang Kai-shek, a man who both built and shattered the Chinese dream. Let's explore whether he was truly a misunderstood genius or just an overconfident leader who gambled everything and lost it all. Welcome to Faces of History. Here we uncover fascinating stories from the past and dive into the lives of legendary figures who shaped the course of world history. If you're passionate about history and the incredible journeys of those who made it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. Let's embark on this inspiring journey through time together. Youth and the path to leadership. Chiang Kai-shek, or Tonggyoi Thach, was born into a farming family in Zhejiang province in 1887. If anyone had told him back then that he would one day lead China, he might have laughed it off and gone back to sweeping the yard. But surprisingly, from this humble background, he nurtured an ambition to become the head of the country. As a child, Chiang was known for being stubborn. Perhaps this is why he didn't quite fit in with the classical Confucian lessons. After all, reading about rituals and propriety wasn't as exciting as wielding a sword and playing hero in his imagination. This led him to pursue a military career, and before long he found his path, studying military strategy in Japan. In Japan, Chiang quickly realized something intriguing. The army there was nothing like the Chinese officials who sat around reading the Analects. They were modern, disciplined, and, most importantly, capable of defeating the Qing army with ease. Chiang became passionate about learning advanced military techniques and gradually transformed into a young officer with grand ambitions, at least in his own eyes. However, studying military tactics wasn't the only reason Chiang went to Japan. It was also an opportunity for him to meet Sun Yat-sen, a famous revolutionary who was evading arrest. Sun was the leader of the movement to overthrow the Qing dynasty, and immediately Chiang found himself drawn to his ideals. This was the moment when Chiang transitioned from being a stubborn young man to a stubborn man with ideals. After returning to China, Chiang joined the Kuomintang, KMT, Sun Yat-sen's revolutionary organization. At first, he was just an ordinary soldier, but with his talent and absolute loyalty to Sun, Chiang quickly rose through the ranks. He not only learned how to fight, but also how to govern, and even how to eliminate political rivals. Yes, from this point, he began proving that he wasn't one to share power. And so, from a rural boy, Chiang Kai-shek climbed the ladder of power, step by step, eventually becoming the supreme leader of the Kuomintang. But remember, this was just the beginning. The following chapters of his life would be turbulent, and of course, filled with moments when his confidence led him to make disastrous decisions. The rise within the Kuomintang. Chiang Kai-shek was not the founder of the Kuomintang, KMT. The party had existed before, founded by Sun Yat-sen, but he was certainly the one who made it more magnificent, both in terms of success and the fiery internal conflicts that arose. Let's take a look at the cunning and decisive journey Chiang took to become the boss of the organization. Sun Yat-sen's outstanding student. Sun Yat-sen once said, "Unity is strength." But in reality, the Kuomintang at the time resembled a club where every member wanted to be the chairman. When Chiang joined, he quickly realized that in order to survive and advance within this organization, you not only needed ideals, but also a strategic mind, and sometimes a bit of deep plotting. Under Sun's guidance, Chiang not only learned about revolution, but also how to deal with opponents. Imagine a young man standing in the background, observing everything, carefully taking notes. Ah, this guy seems dangerous. Better avoid him. That guy looks easier to manipulate, so I'll temporarily cooperate. The Northern Expedition, Chiang's Golden Campaign. The Northern Expedition, 1926-1928, was Chiang's biggest launchpad, propelling him from a military commander to the leader of the nation. His mission was to unify China by defeating the local warlord factions. And somehow he succeeded, though not through superhuman military strength, but through a strange mix of negotiation, bribery, and, when necessary, force. Critics argue that he won by buying guns with money. But let's be fair, if you have a plan where weapons, soldiers, and politicians are all strategically arranged, the outcome is still victory, right? The Shanghai Purge, a dubious legacy. In 1927, after defeating several warlords and consolidating power in the south, Chiang began to handle things internally. The Chinese Communist Party, at this point an ally of the Kuomintang, suddenly found itself betrayed by Chiang. In a bloody night in Shanghai, thousands of communists were arrested or killed. This event, known as the Shanghai Purge, turned Chiang into a feared figure in the eyes of the leftist factions. Chiang confidently declared, "I am not afraid to be the bad guy if it helps China become better." However, history continues to debate whether he did this for ideological reasons or merely to eliminate political rivals. One thing is certain, from that moment on, the Kuomintang belonged to Chiang and no one else. Consolidating power. After the Northern Expedition and the Purge, Chiang officially became the supreme leader of the Kuomintang. He quickly concentrated power in his hands, establishing a government that seemed modern, but was in reality a dictatorship. Those who disagreed with Chiang were either invited to go abroad or sent to prison, of course, with a very polite invitation. Chiang liked to say that he was building a democratic nation based on Sun Yat-sen's 3 principles of the people. But in reality, many felt that his country resembled more of a military kingdom. Still, one must admit that Chiang had the ability to keep the Kuomintang strong and continue to be a major force in China, at least until things fell apart. From a loyal soldier, he became the man holding the fate of all China, at least for a time. The rise of Chiang Kai-shek is not just a story of leadership talent, but also a lesson in how to navigate, and sometimes ruthlessly manipulate, to maintain power in a highly conflicted organization like the Kuomintang. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility, and the next chapters will show us how Chiang handled that weight. Conflict with the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. The relationship between Chiang Kai-shek and the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, was like a turbulent marriage, starting with reluctant cooperation, followed by heated arguments, and ultimately ending in a violent divorce. In short, this is the story of 2 forces trying to save China, but neither was willing to let the other do it. The reluctant alliance. Let's begin with the so-called Nationalist Communist Alliance. After Sun Yat-sen's death, the Kuomintang faced shortages of soldiers, money, and, well, everything. To increase their power, Sun, and later Chiang, decided to cooperate with the CCP, which at the time was a small group of idealistic young revolutionaries. In theory, it was a win-win relationship. The Kuomintang needed soldiers and ideology, while the CCP needed a platform to expand. But in reality, it was like 2 strangers living under one roof, just waiting for the day they would kick each other out. Chiang Kai-shek was no fan of communism. He saw it as a fantastical ideology that was incompatible with the realities of China. On the other hand, the CCP viewed Chiang as a bourgeois opportunist, no better than a gentleman who liked to put on airs. It's not hard to see that this alliance wasn't going to last. The Shanghai Purge, the breaking point. In 1927, after the Kuomintang secured some victories during the Northern Expedition, Chiang decided it was time for an internal cleanup. Claiming that the CCP was plotting to seize control of the Kuomintang, he launched a large-scale purge in Shanghai. Thousands of Communist Party members were arrested, killed, or forced to flee. Chiang must have been quite pleased with this plan, telling himself, "Finally, I've cleaned up the organization." However, what he didn't anticipate was that the CCP didn't disappear. Instead, they retreated into the rural areas, where they began to reorganize their forces. And from here, the full-scale civil war between the nationalists and communists officially erupted. A war that, as you know, didn't end well for Chiang. The long civil war, who will win over time? From the late 1920s to the 1940s, the Kuomintang and the CCP fought relentlessly. The Kuomintang, with Chiang at the helm, controlled the major cities and coastal regions. Meanwhile, the CCP, under Mao Zedong's leadership, thrived in the rural areas. Each side had its own strategy. Chiang, relied on a modern military and support from foreign powers like the US. Mao focused on guerrilla warfare and winning the hearts of the people. Chiang believed he could crush the CCP through military force, but the reality was much harsher. Every time he won a battle, the CCP would emerge elsewhere, stronger than before. It was like playing a game of whack-a-mole, only these moles were incredibly persistent. Temporary cooperation during World War II. Ironically, when Japan invaded China in 1937, Chiang was forced to set aside his hatred and cooperate with the CCP to fight the common enemy. It was like two people who despised each other but had no choice but to team up. However, even during the war, the two sides remained suspicious of each other and engaged in underhanded tactics. Chiang allocated more resources to monitor the CCP than to fight the Japanese, while the CCP used the war to expand its influence in the countryside. Defeat and retreat. After World War II, the civil war between the Kuomintang and the CCP resumed, but by now the situation had reversed. Despite having a strong army and support from the United States, Chiang faced serious internal problems: corruption, poor management, and losing the support of the people. Meanwhile, the CCP grew stronger and gained the support of the majority rural population. In 1949, after a series of military defeats, Chiang was forced to retreat to Taiwan. He must have felt bitter watching the CCP seize Beijing and declare the establishment of the People's Republic of China. However, he did not forget to leave behind a vow: "I will return." The conflict between Chiang and the CCP was not merely a battle for power, but a clash of two vastly different visions for China's future. One side aimed to modernize in the Western capitalist style, while the other pursued a socialist revolution. The final result may not have favored Chiang, but he undoubtedly left an indelible mark on history as a leader who never gave up, even when everything seemed to be against him. The years in exile in Taiwan. After losing to the CCP in the Civil War and being forced to retreat from mainland China, Chiang Kai-shek brought about 2 million people, mostly soldiers and officials, to the small island of Taiwan in 1949. This marked the beginning of his king without a crown life, full of ups and downs, where he was tasked with building a new nation while constantly dreaming of the day he would return to the mainland. A dream that, unfortunately, only existed in his imagination. Taiwan, a land of new beginnings. When Chiang arrived in Taiwan, he realized that this was not an ideal land for dreamers. The agricultural economy was backward, the infrastructure was weak, and the local population was not particularly enthusiastic about the refugee army from the mainland. But Chiang, with his unwavering determination of never giving up, decided to transform Taiwan into the new heart of China, at least in his eyes. His declaration at the time was bold: "Taiwan is just a temporary base. We will return to the mainland." But the reality was that he turned this small island into an economic and political fortress, and perhaps that was even more significant than the idea of returning. Building a modern Taiwan. Chiang Kai-shek was not a fan of democracy, but he was highly skilled at concentrating power to drive reforms. In Taiwan, he implemented martial law, a dictatorial system that allowed him to control the entire island. This gave him the ability to carry out a series of economic reforms without facing significant opposition. Land reform. Land was redistributed from wealthy landowners to farmers. This not only improved the living conditions of the rural population, but also strengthened their loyalty to the government. Industrialization. With support from the United States, Taiwan quickly became one of the fastest-growing economies in Asia, earning the nickname Taiwan Miracle. However, ironically, Taiwan's economic success stemmed from ideas of reform that the CCP had previously applied on the mainland. If Chiang knew this, he might have felt a bit bitter. The endless anti-communist campaign. Even in Taiwan, Chiang never forgot his goal of liberating the mainland. Every day he made military plans and delivered powerful speeches about reclaiming China. But the reality was that his forces were never strong enough to accomplish this. The CCP's military on the mainland continued to grow stronger, while the United States, his biggest ally, grew increasingly tired of these ambitions. Interestingly, to resist communism, Chiang employed a rather humorous strategy: sending propaganda balloons to the mainland. These balloons carried pamphlets, fake money, and even handwritten letters urging the people to rise up and overthrow the CCP. Of course, the effectiveness of this strategy was minimal, but it showed that Chiang never gave up hope, even in his small, futile efforts. Personal life and attachment to power. During his years in Taiwan, Chiang maintained a patriarchal style of leadership. He lived in a luxurious mansion, was heavily guarded, and continued to issue commands as though he were still leading all of China. His wife, Sung Mei-ling, played a crucial role in shaping his international image. She was the diplomatic face of Taiwan, helping maintain relations with the United States and Western countries. However, Chiang's rule was not without problems. The martial law, which lasted nearly 40 years, led to numerous political crackdowns, most notably the February 28th massacre in 1947, when thousands of indigenous Taiwanese were killed for opposing the government. This left a dark stain on his reign and made Chiang's image in Taiwan a subject of controversy, the unfulfilled dream. Despite transforming Taiwan into an economic and political fortress, Chiang Kai-shek never gave up on his dream of returning to mainland China. He passed away in 1975, carrying with him the unfulfilled dream of reunifying China. Meanwhile, Taiwan gradually developed into a modern democracy, something Chiang himself likely could never have imagined. The years in Taiwan stand as a testament to both the talent and stubbornness of Chiang Kai-shek. He transformed a small island into a leading economic center in Asia, but also left behind much controversy surrounding his dictatorship. Whether you view him as a hero or a tyrant, it is undeniable that Taiwan today is heavily influenced by his legacy, both the good and the bad. And with all those achievements, perhaps the only thing he truly regretted was not being able to fulfill his vow to return. Achievements and controversies, a two-sided legacy. Chiang Kai-shek, hero or tyrant, revolutionary or failure? These questions are not easy to answer, as his legacy is full of contradictions, much like his life. In this section, we will examine the notable achievements and the divisive controversies surrounding this historical figure. Achievements, the bright spots in Chiang's legacy. Unification of China, temporarily. Under Chiang's leadership, the Kuomintang conducted the Northern Expedition, 1926-1928, and defeated local warlords, creating a unified China, at least in theory. This was a significant achievement, as the country had previously been fragmented by warring factions. Ironically, this unity was short-lived, as China soon plunged back into chaos with the civil war between the Kuomintang and the CCP, as well as the Japanese invasion. Resistance against Japan. Chiang was the leader of China during the 8-year-long war against Japan, 1937-1945. Despite many setbacks and strategic retreats, he helped China withstand one of the strongest armies in the world at the time. With support from the Allies, especially the United States, he became a symbol of the anti-fascist movement in Asia. If there were an award for patience, he would certainly be a strong contender. Building a modern Taiwan. After retreating to Taiwan, Chiang transformed the small island into one of the fastest-growing economies in the world, earning the title Taiwan Miracle. His policies of land reform, industrialization, and education laid the foundation for Taiwan's current economic success, serving as a bridge to the West. Thanks to the diplomatic skills of his wife, Sung Mei-ling, Chiang maintained a close relationship with the United States and Western countries. This not only helped Taiwan receive aid, but also helped shape a strong image of a free China during the Cold War. Controversies, unavoidable stains, defeat to the CCP. Perhaps nothing is more controversial than Chiang losing mainland China to the Chinese Communist Party. Despite receiving support from the United States and having a strong military, he still lost the Civil War. Many critics argue that he wasted his opportunity due to corruption and poor management. His famous declaration, "We will return to the mainland," ultimately became an empty promise. The dictatorship in Taiwan. Under Chiang's rule, Taiwan endured nearly 40 years of martial law. He controlled every aspect of political life and did not hesitate to suppress dissenting voices. The February 28th massacre of 1947, where thousands of indigenous Taiwanese were killed, remains one of the darkest chapters of his career. This event is a major reason many indigenous Taiwanese still view him as a symbol of oppression. Corruption and poor management. The Kuomintang government under Chiang was notorious for widespread corruption. From high-ranking officials to low-level soldiers, all were involved in scandals. This eroded public trust and played a significant role in his defeat to Mao Zedong. Controversial military strategy. During the war against Japan, Chiang was criticized for prioritizing the destruction of the CCP over fully focusing on the foreign enemy. This decision led many to question his patriotism, quite an ironic stance for someone who always regarded himself as China's savior. Conservative ideology. Despite speaking often about reforms, Chiang maintained a feudal and authoritarian mindset. He emphasized his own role over the establishment of strong institutions, which left the Kuomintang unable to adapt to the sweeping changes of the era. One might say, Chiang was skilled at achieving great things, but failed in the most crucial areas. He built but couldn't protect mainland China, turned Taiwan into a miracle, yet left behind a dictatorship. And most importantly, he always dreamed of returning, but that day never came. Still, Chiang Kai-shek remains a symbol. Loved or hated, he left an indelible mark on the history of China and the world. Chiang Kai-shek is a complex figure, and there is nothing more interesting than placing him alongside other leaders of his time to see where he stands on the historical leaderboard. This is a comparison between Chiang and his peers, or rivals, on the international political stage, with a touch of humor but still maintaining objectivity. Chiang Kai-shek versus Mao Zedong, two extremes of China. Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek are two opposing poles in modern Chinese history. If Mao was the victor in the Civil War, then Chiang was the greatest loser. Ideology. Mao was skilled at using communist ideology to win the people's hearts, while Chiang believed in military power and nationalism. Ironically, while Mao created a revolution from the peasant class, Chiang never truly reached their hearts. Achievements. Mao's economic policies may be controversial, but he established the People's Republic of China and unified the country. Chiang, on the other hand, turned a small Taiwan into an economic miracle. In other words, Mao won big on the mainland, while Chiang won small in Taiwan. Legacy. Mao is remembered as a great revolutionary, with many mistakes, while Chiang is remembered as a capable exiled leader, but ultimately powerless at home. Irony. Mao is the towering mountain, while Chiang is the small but steadfast rock. One took the whole country, the other took an island. Chiang Kai-shek versus Ho Chi Minh, the loser versus the victor. Both Ho Chi Minh and Chiang Kai-shek faced foreign powers. Ho fought against the French and the Americans, while Chiang battled the Japanese and the CCP. However, Ho had a clear advantage. He won and established the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, while Chiang lost China. Leadership. Ho Chi Minh was a leader closely connected to the people, using communist ideology to unite and lead. Chiang, on the other hand, was distant, relying on military power and often criticized for corruption within his government. Legacy. Ho is respected by the people of Vietnam, while Chiang left a divisive image in both Taiwan and China. Irony. If Ho Chi Minh is the uncle of all the Vietnamese people, Chiang could be likened to a strict boss, demanding loyalty but rarely offering warmth. Chiang Kai-shek versus Franklin D. Roosevelt. Allies but different. Both Chiang and Roosevelt were leaders during World War II, but their approaches to governing were completely different. Strategy. Roosevelt was a master at building international alliances and leveraging America's economic power to win the war. Meanwhile, Chiang relied heavily on foreign support, but failed to fully tap into his potential. Democracy versus dictatorship. Roosevelt was a symbol of democracy, leading through persuasion. Chiang, on the other hand, ruled as a dictator, with martial law lasting for decades. Irony. Roosevelt may have been criticized for holding the presidency for 4 terms, but at least he handed over power after victory. Chiang, he held on to power until the end of his life and never left the seat. Chiang Kai-shek versus Lee Kuan Yew, the dream of Asia realized. If Chiang is seen as the man who turned Taiwan into an economic miracle, then Lee Kuan Yew is the father of the Singapore miracle. But the difference lies in how they achieved it. Leadership. Lee Kuan Yew was not only a brilliant strategist, but also a leader who listened and implemented reforms. Chiang, on the other hand, leaned heavily on military power and political control. Legacy. Lee Kuan Yew is respected as a symbol of innovation, while Chiang remains controversial due to his dictatorial regime. Irony: if Lee Kuan Yew was a leader who knew how to speak and persuade, Chiang resembled a strict father, always demanding discipline without explaining why. Chiang Kai-shek is a historical figure full of contradictions, an imperfect leader, but one whose immense role in the history of China and Taiwan cannot be denied. He failed in his dream of reunifying China, yet succeeded in transforming Taiwan into a developed economy. He was both controversial and inspiring, a figure that prompts reflection on the meaning of power, failure, and resilience. Looking back, Chiang Kai-shek was neither a saint nor a villain. He was a human being, with all his mistakes and achievements, a person that history will always remember. So what do you think of Chiang Kai-shek? Was he a hero or just an overly ambitious leader? Leave a comment below and share your perspective. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to continue following captivating stories about the figures who shaped our world.